You're listening to the Grassroots Network podcast, exclusively on the Pod Station.
Welcome to the Grassroots Network podcast, proudly sponsored by the Grassroots Outlet. Our mission is to provide football coaches, players and clubs with quality coaching equipment at the best possible prices. Our brands include Nike, Puma, Precision and Diamond. You can find our complete selection of products at www.thegrassrootsoutlet.com. Use promo code TGN10 for 10% off at checkout with free delivery on orders over £150. That's www.thegrassrootsoutlet.com, supplying the game.
Okay, so this week's episode of the Grassroots Network, I'm joined by Keith. Keith is a local referee. He is a grassroots coach and he has two daughters who play grassroots football. So Keith, thank you very much for coming on today, mate. If you want to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a background of what you do and what your journey so far.
Thank you very much for having me on today. I started coaching 4 years ago. My daughter started playing football for the first time. She was asked to go and play for a team. Then, as often happens in grassroots football, coaches had to step away, and I volunteered to start coaching and to look after the team. From there, I then sort of got involved in refereeing because there was a shortage of referees at the league that they played in. So I'd step in and cover the odd game when there was nobody available. And then after COVID, went and did all my referee course so that I could do it officially and then join the league as a referee. I also do kids after school clubs for primary school children, so that just getting them started to enjoy football and to develop the ball mastery skills and to start playing.
Yeah. So your refereeing journey so far, how's that been? And is it something that you're going to continue to press and get to the highest level, or would you want to just stay within the grassroots game?
So I think I'm a little bit too old now to be going for Premier League. I'm in the process of going for my promotion this year. So I'll be going to from level 7 to level 6. I 100% will be carrying on refereeing. It's something I really, really enjoy doing. It also helps with the coaching. You get to see how other coaches do warm-ups, how they interact with the players, how they speak to the players, how the tactics and things that they use on the pitch. You get to see some really good football and be involved in it as well. So it helps you develop as a coach and as a referee. It's something I enjoy doing. I've been, I think I said I've been on a pitch every day this week, refereeing from school games to academy games for Liverpool. It's a really good mix of football that you get to do.
Yeah. Is there a specific age group that you enjoy refereeing?
No, I do all from under 7s all the way through to veterans football. It all comes with different challenges. So the under 8s just starting out, it is a little bit of coaching, explaining to them how it works, why you have to stop when you blow your whistle, tying shoelaces, that sort of thing. And then open age and vets football, it's a much more challenging, more player management, occasionally more arguments. But you've just got to adapt to the game that you referee, and you can have tricky under 12s games that are harder to referee than a vets game or an open age game.
Yeah, they start at that tricky age, don't they? Where
very much so.
They start understanding they've got a voice. They start understanding that they can speak to referees in a certain way. I think recently, obviously, we've seen Jurgen Klopp kind of go nuts at fourth officials and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, he's not the only manager to do it. There's a good load of high level coaches that do it. But have you seen it more and more within the game because of it? Or is it something that crops up that because they see the professionals doing it, they assume that they can do it to you?
Very much so, yes. Things that happen in the professional game trickle down into grassroots football. officials will make mistakes on the football pitch, the same as players make mistakes on the football pitch. We're human. But when you see someone screaming and shouting like that, it will happen on a park or a football pitch sort of the following weekend, because they've seen it happen.
Yeah, it's that age old that I had a local grassroots referee on one of the first couple of episodes, and he was like, there's a reason why you're playing amateur football and there's a reason why I'm an amateur ref. Both of us are going to make mistakes, and I think that's probably a big point to sort of point out. Does the refereeing help in your coaching as well? So do you think twice about when maybe you question referees' decisions? Is it something that goes hand in hand?
Yes. Yeah. So you put yourself on the pitch. So it's like, often you might say, well, I would have given that decision differently, or I would have given that decision, or wouldn't have given that decision. But the referee is in charge of the game, so it's completely up to them if they feel that that's a foul or offside or however they want to they deal with that. You just have to get on with it. I will coach players at training to where I will make mistakes on purpose to see how they react to it. So I'll give a throw in the wrong way. I'll give a goal kick rather than a corner. I won't give a foul, or I will give a foul. To see how players react to that and get them used to not shouting at the referee, or you just get on with it.
So if you do get a bad reaction, what's the next sort of step then?
So I'll speak to the player. If it's in training, I'll speak to the player. If it's in a match, I will bring that player off and have a word with them. I say to them sort of after games, we don't blame the referee. If it's up to us to play well in the game and do the best we can in the game, we can't let outside influence. We can't blame somebody else if we've not done something we should have done.
Taking a little bit of responsibility, isn't it? You can't. So if you've made a mistake, majority of the time it comes from players that have made that mistake, and they overreact or overcompensate trying to fix it, and then they automatically shift the blame onto someone else. Usually it's like a bad first touch, and then it goes off into they've got to regain the possession back and get it back. But in terms of your coaching, then what is it? The younger age groups for your daughters? Is it what's the gap like?
So I have an under 13s team at the moment. And so they train on a Thursday and we play on a Sunday, and after school clubs are for primary school, so they can be 9 to 11s.
Yeah. Do you enjoy coaching girls football rather than have you done mixed ages? Obviously in the schools you would have done, but in terms of your teams, if you just coach your daughters' teams? So
I've only coached girls weekly. I've done some goalkeeper coaching, which is mixed, and I've done some one-off work with boys' teams. Even the after-school clubs are girls' football. It's very much when my daughter started playing, the opportunities weren't there for them to be able to play. We had to travel 45 minutes for her to be able to find a local team to be able to play in. So any opportunity I can to get more girls playing, I will lend my time to that and support it.
Did you not try and put her into a mixed team?
She didn't enjoy it.
No.
She was just starting out, and she just didn't have the confidence to be able to play with the boys. She was going to a Premier League kicks, and she'd hardly touch the ball. And the boys wouldn't pass to her because she was a girl. And she said she was enjoying it, but she just wasn't involved in the game. Whereas the difference when she went and played with girls was massive. She got more confident. She developed quicker, and she enjoyed it a lot more. Yeah.
Would you say the social side of that picked up a lot more, didn't it? It gave her that confidence to be with girls. I mean, I've advocated, and I probably would, girls playing in mixed teams for as long as possible, just so when a certain time comes, they can deal with the physicality that the women's game will bring in, because you look at the women's game, and for me, I find it a lot more physically demanding than the men's game. Not in terms of the running and stuff like that, but in terms of girls love a tackle. They don't go down like lads. The challenges are stronger, I find, in women's football, and I think giving girls opportunities to play in a mixed team as well, I absolutely have them playing in all girls teams. But I think you touched on it there, that having to drive 45 minutes for a girls session, it's not great. And now there's Wildcats programs popping up. Every club is got it available to them, and they should be able to. I mean, there's a very rare few all female clubs about now, and hopefully that's something we see growing and growing and growing. You refereeing, and I'll bring it back to boys v girls. Do you referee a lot of girls' games as well?
Yes. Yeah.
And what's the difference there between the two? Is there much of a difference?
Massively. It's two. I would say it is two completely different games. When you, the girls will, it's a more technical game. They'll pass it. They'll pass it better technically. There won't be as many long ball attempts. They'll play out from the back. They'll build through the thirds of the pitch. In the girls' football, it's not as physical. But it is a completely different game than boys. If you do a under 13s girls game and an under 13 boys games, the format could be different. You could be playing 9 aside for the girls and 11 aside for the boys. It will be more physical. There'll be more slide tackles going in. There'll be more for you to have to deal with as a referee, because there'll be a lot more fouls. But it is two different games.
Yeah. Would you say girls probably respect the referees a little bit more than the boys?
Up until they get to a certain age, and when they get to teenagers, that's when you start seeing the shouts of ref and like, have you not seen that? And an attitude change happens sort of when they get to teenagers.
Yeah.
As something clicks that we want to win this game, they get more competitive.
So for yourself, obviously, you've got the two sides of the coins. You've got coaching and you've got refereeing. Out of the two of them, which one do you prefer? If you got the opportunity to go into, say, full-time coaching or full-time refereeing, which one would win that battle?
That changes daily. Yeah, depending on the match that you've just had or what's happened. I would say coaching, because being able to develop players and seeing players develop from they've only just started playing when you first took them, and they've ended up going into academy football, or they now play for, like, they got selected for the county or something like that. You see, even if they score the first goal or they save a penalty or something like that, it is really rewarding to see sort of how they develop. And I've seen some players who weren't confident when they started to being signed and going on to hopefully they'll get into the WSL or sort of in the future. And it's that's I think I enjoy that more.
Yeah, I can see that, and I can understand that. I mean, me personally, I refereed obviously at the younger age groups, when you don't have referees allocated or anything like that, and it's an absolutely thankless job. It's probably the most difficult thing to do, and for all the torrents of abuse that referees get, and we're seeing it now that there is a massive shortage. Young kids are getting into it and they're being pushed forward and pushed, and that's great. That's good that there's a pathway there. But do you think that the younger referees coming through now, that they stay in the game long enough to be able to make that big change where there's going to be enough of it available referees and football just doesn't kind of die? I think there's going to come a breaking point where coaches are going to be looking around, and I mean, referees are finite at the moment anyway, but there's going to come a time where you're going to be like, well, one of your parents is going to have to do it because there's no referees. hopefully that brings in a change of behaviour. Is there anything you think that would be able to encourage that sort of behaviour from parents in the first place?
We're almost at that point now. There are leagues that do have good levels of referees, but there's still games that parents have to referee or coaches have to referee. There's things like the Referees Association that referees can sign up for. That gives them support opportunities, CPD and things like that. That's massively helped me when I first started refereeing. Just being able to go every month to the meeting and have Premier League level referees coming and speaking to you and going through games and explaining why they give the decisions, even just the laws of the game reviews and things that they do. So you're being tested on like what happens in a penalty shootout if a player gets sent off, which is, unfortunately has happened in a cup game where the game's got to be replayed. And that helps massively. There could be more support for referees coming through like that, because there are some really good young referees, certainly in the area at the moment, who could go on to Premier League or WSL sort of level if they wanted to, but they need the support there to get them through the tough times. And but things like the support campaigns that are out there, I think they could do with more to help the referees.
Did you participate in the silent weekend?
Yes.
How did you find it?
It was a very odd weekend because some leagues took part and some didn't. And teams that had so they might have had a boys team in one league that was taking part and a girls team in another league that wasn't taking part, asked the girls team to take part in it as well. So you had an interesting thing where you had one team whose parents and coaches were being silent on one side, and a team that wasn't taking part, not being silent on the other. So it was a lot quieter at one hub than it usually is. But it was odd where one team were being played FIFA with, and one team was getting no help at all because they were taking part. Our league did take part. It was really well. In the game that we played, both sides, it was really well. There was applause and like well done's and things when the keeper we played against made an absolutely amazing save, she was well clapped by both sides for doing it. I understand completely why it's needed. The coaches and parents giving instructions for the entire game stops players from developing. I think I didn't like it personally because it stopped all coaching. And even if you just wanted to, I want to change the formation, it's not working. I wanted to shout an instruction to a player or something like that. I felt like I couldn't do that because it was all I was told I could do was clap and deal with that, encourage, and then we reset some tactics at half time. I thought it went too far too soon for what it was trying to achieve. Yeah,
for the coaching element of it, rather than, because my thought on it was the atmosphere that you get on a grassroots pitch at the hubs and on a local field. I find the atmosphere fantastic, where you've got parents overzealous and enjoying the game. There's a lot of negative, there is, but the positive side of it, where, for example, what if in a game a young girl or a young boy hadn't scored before and he scored, and the parents are like, yeah, well done, and they're observing it, but it needs to be given that atmosphere. There needs to be that little bit of specialness that comes with grassroots football for me. I'm not saying that, it should be silent. I'm not saying that, I think encouragement and positivity only, which it's very cliche and it's very sort of, hippy dippy, but that's the way these kids enjoy football and want to stay in the game. There's a reason why 12, 13, 14 kids drop out, because they've probably had that much stuff over the years from such a young age that they just can't be bothered. And that positive, if it's rewarded and rewarded and rewarded, there's going to be times, isn't there, where you're going to have to do little bits of critique and be like, okay, well, maybe this is where we can improve and stuff like that. But I think that's down to coaches to do and work on the training pitch rather than within a game and stuff. So,
yeah, it's funny you should say that about the play scoring for the first time, because on the game next to us was a cup game, which went to penalties. And the team had fought back and managed to equalise and take it to penalties.
Yeah.
And then normally in a penalty shootout, when the goalkeeper's like saved the penalty, or which wins them the penalty shootout, everyone would be screaming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it was just a polite.
and that's it. Football is a game of emotion. It's atmosphere. There's a reason why if you can get to a stadium to watch a game, you get to a stadium to watch a game. And Grassroots is the same.
It was very much reminded me of watching watching football during COVID lockdowns, where there was no atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you could hear the players talking on the pitch, and that is good to hear. But equally, you want to support your daughter or your son or whoever's playing on the pitch. If someone's done something well, you want to get involved. And
of course you do.
I felt I didn't enjoy the weekend just gone.
Yeah, I think hopefully if there's a few takeaways from a couple of the county FAs who did sort of encourage it, because I know a lot of leagues, they encouraged it, but they didn't say it was mandatory. In our league, in what my under-15s play on, I think we're quite lucky where majority of the time lines are quieter. It is encouragement and it's sort of admiration for the football that's played. But in terms of the coaching side of it, I get emotionally invested in the team and wanting them to perform, that I don't think I could be quiet. And that's not to say I'm ranting and raving like a lunatic. I coach with positivity and I always try my best to ask questions of players rather than instructions, involve them in problem solving rather than go there, like you said before, FIFA players, FIFA games, because that's not a way, unfortunately, children learn. I mean, some might learn from that, from you need to go there and that's it. They might pick up, but I find the vast majority of children are ask them a question, can you problem solve yourself? And you find a lot of the time they get to result a little bit quicker. What initiatives from yourself being referee and coach, what initiatives could you sort of think of? Is there anything that could be improved upon from that sort of little breakaway? Because for me, it's a good starting point. But now, can you gradually and progressively improve it?
I think they'd have to look further back. I think they'd have to look at making sure all coaches are coaching the right way, and they're not playing FIFA with the players on the pitch, and that is something which has increased over the last few seasons, where you run there, you pass to this player, you shoot, and then you hear players saying, "Am I allowed to shoot? Am I allowed to score a goal?" And yeah, you are. Yeah, that's the point of it. But they're so whatever the coach or my parent tells me that I'm
step by step.
Yeah, what's worse is when you've got a parent telling a player one thing and you can see the coach on the other side going, "No, I don't want them to make that run, or I don't want them to do that. I've told them to do this instruction," and the parents telling them to do something completely different. Until they can be sure that that's not happening, I think they've got to work on that. They've got to work on making sure that coaches are being positive and they're letting the players make the decisions on the pitch, not the coach shouting minute instructions on how it all needs to, how they want them to play. Because if you take the coach away, them kids don't know what to do. They don't know how to play. And then they can ease it in. And maybe moving the parents back a little bit further so that they're not as close to I'm sure they won't like that because they want to see their kids play football. But I would say some of the best football I saw was during COVID when the players were dropped off at the the front of the centre, went and played a really good game of football, and then came back out and the parents took them home, because there was no pressure then. There was no pressure on them to what they need to do. They just went and enjoyed playing football.
Yeah.
And that is contradicting what we said about the atmosphere and things. But it shows that when they're not under someone screaming and shouting at them, that the kids really enjoy it and play with them. Yeah.
I think that point where it's not picked up on enough, like coaches, referees, clubs, teams get all this stuff given to them, knowledge, education, learning. Parents get absolutely nothing. And that, for me, is a big thing that needs to be addressed. Now, whether that comes down to a club level, whether that comes down to a team level or a coach wanting to do it. There was a guy on from Hope Farm, and he has what Hope Farm did was set up a parent liaison officer. So for every team, a parent is kind of nominated or put forward to be this sort of go-to between coach and parents. Now, I think if a lot of clubs have that sort of philosophy or that practice in place, and you get the right people in place, I think that's a very, very good idea. And I was really impressed when he mentioned it and the way he put it forward, because if the coach tells this parent liaison officer, look, no instruction, no sort of individual coaching of your child, this is what it needs to be, and they become that sort of go-to in between, where a coach, as we know, has got so much stuff to do anyway. Having a parent individually coaching someone is not ideal, but to have that other parent who's probably embedded in that group and that core sort of shape of the families that are on the sideline, to just say, look, give it a rest day, let the coaches coach. And that's for me the way it needs to be. And I really enjoyed that idea. I think that is something clubs could pick up on across all age groups, across every team. Now, it's going to be difficult because parents aren't going to want to give up their time, because let's face it, if they did, they'd come in and coach anyway. And I think the education for parents isn't there. And that's what needs to be had, because when you go into like pro clubs and when you go into academies and stuff, it certainly is there. But there's nothing for the grassroots game. And I think if the FA were to have a little bit of initiative for parents, where they sent something out to clubs and they said, look, send this out to your parents and make sure a vast majority have watched it to be aware. I think something like that would really, really improve the sort of atmosphere around, and it'd stop. I wouldn't say it'd stop because people wouldn't listen, but I think it'd have a very big impact on the way people behave around football matches and training and stuff like that. So
I think that's a good idea. I like that idea.
Yeah. What club are you based at?
So at the moment, I look after Wigan ladies under 13s.
Yeah, I think is it an all women's club? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. And what's the timeline of them? Have they been going for a while? Have they a little bit sort of younger?
They've been going. They're quite a well-established team. They go all the way from under 8s to a women's team.
Yeah.
With a plan that they want to be playing in the National League within 5-6 years.
So are they looking to build that pathway for the women's football through all the way through? Is there anything in particular that your club does a little bit differently then to sort of advocate any of these things?
We have been asked to do parent and player forums. So there is feedback from the parents and the players on what they like and what they don't like, or what we can improve on. I am going to suggest that parent liaison between the club, because I do think that's a good idea. They are really good on the safeguarding aspect of making sure that the players are looked after, and we're up to date with everything that we need to do as a club. And I think that something like that would be.
I was, like I said, I was really impressed with it when it first came out, and he mentioned it to me. I stewed on it later that night as well after talking to Jamie, and it was it was like a little bit of a light bulb moment, and you think, that's something that's really simple, can be easily implemented, doesn't cost any money. You just need to find that willing participants. And to be fair, the majority of teams, they do have them. They do have that sort of parent who does want to get involved that little bit more. It's not enough to be a coach, but it's enough to kind of be involved and make sure that everything's okay.
Is it more than playmaker? The FA sort of playmaker course, which they ask anybody involved in grassroots football to do?
Yeah, I don't even think it's that. I think they're just literally a DBS adult. That's the sort of criteria he gave me, that someone who could maybe jump in when needed. If for example, something happened to the coach and they couldn't quite make it there, they're there as that second sort of adult that the FA like to have. And again, I think it's just that link between parent and coaches, because a lot of the time you can cultivate personal relationships with parents, and then out of the blue, they'll come up with something like, why hasn't little Johnny played more than 25 minutes? And you're like, well, everyone's played 20. And you know, when that issue becomes in, that's that upper personal. Whereas if they were to go to a parent liaison officer and it'd be like, well, I've got this issue. Okay, well, let's address it, and we'll sit down, all three of us, and then the coach isn't kind of he said, she said. There's actually that third party there to sort of focus a little bit more on the objective and the subjective, rather than, you know, you've got something against my kid, and there's been situations like that in the past. So, but I'll go to it because there's one thing I always want to ask referees, and it's to highlight probably the worst parts of the game. But what's like your worst situation you've ever been in while you've been refereeing? Has there been something that bad, or the way you deal and referee with a game anyway, does it not get to that point?
I try not to let it get to that point. I did have an incident last season where a spectator on the sideline wasn't happy over a throw-in that I'd given. He very strongly felt that I'd given it to the wrong team. That was followed up a few minutes later by a foul was committed. I played advantage, and then the other team committed a foul, so I brought it back for the first offence. At which point he decided that he really didn't like me, and I was giving every decision to the other team, to the point where he tried to walk onto the pitch to swearing and threatening violence and all sorts, that because I was the worst referee and the worst person in the world. And it took a good 4 or 5 minutes to get that person away from the pitch. And this was an under 13s girls game. So while this was happening, somebody on the pitch was related to that person. It was the first time where it was the first time I'd experienced that. It was the first time that somebody had like made a gesture that they were going to come onto the pitch to then I don't know what he was going to do when he got on there, but it was certainly threatening enough in his language that it was it wasn't good. At that point, you start deciding, do I have to abandon the match? Is there a way that I can calm this down? Or is it just got to the point where my safety's eventually, after some persuading by coaches and sidelines and things like that, this person was removed, and then there was no other issues, and the game went ahead, and it carried on. But then you've got all the reports and everything that has to be done for that, and then you don't hear what the outcome of that is. And that was probably, it's only happened to me once, but that opened my eyes to,
it was enough.
This has got potential of happening. The county FA did some excellent CPD last season on dealing with difficult people. I went and
was this before or
this
after
was before
the
this was before the incident. So it went through how to deal with players, how to deal with coaches, how to deal with spectators. So that I was able to for that to kick in to try and calm it and deal with it. But yeah, that was by far the worst experience I've had on a pitch.
Was the game close? Was it where tempers or maybe emotions would build, or was it just a regular game?
It was just a regular game. It was a pre-season friendly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it started over a throw-in.
See, you wonder what goes through people's minds, don't you? Like, you can't be that competitive for your child and for yourself where you think that's a rational response to whether it be a mistake, I'm guessing the call for the throw-in, it was like bounced off someone's leg and you could have gone either way.
Yep. And the club assistant gave the throw-in to the team as well. So it wasn't like I'd overruled. Yeah. For the foul decision, which made him explode, the coaches and everyone was like, that was the right decision. So it's because you question yourself, going, did I get that wrong? And then but everyone's like, no, you were correct. What you did, we've got no idea why that's happened.
Was he a parent of one of the players?
Grandparent.
Oh, a grandparent. See, that's a little bit more difficult, because one thing you could say is as your report goes in and maybe that process goes through to the club, similar to if you got 3 points while you were Sweden, you got I'm not saying be banned, but if there was an opportunity to go on a course of why people to, you either turn up to that or you not really. See, that's difficult to enforce as well.
So there is a course. There's a safeguarding for spectators course that you can.
Is there?
Yeah. So that's part of the FA's safeguarding courses that it offers.
Well, that needs to be promoted, really, doesn't it? Because
and that should have been a minimum for them to take before they're allowed anywhere near back on the side of a pitch. I feel that should have been a minimum for them to say you can't just.
I think so.
Start screaming and shouting.
That needs to be, because again, there just needs to be that education and knowledge around it. Like because if you're going to clearly persist to act and behave like that, like that's no better than like children's behaviour. You can understand it from a child because unfortunately they haven't got that emotional control and the sort of decision making just yet. But what hope has a child got of an adult acting like that, and then the child starts picking it up? That's not a good look or a good sort of pathway.
You unfortunately you do see that. So the games where you have the most issues are because the sidelines started questioning what's happening. Like, so they'll start like making shouts or disagreeing with decisions that have happened, or then if the coaches do it, then the players will then pick up on that. So there was a game a couple of weeks ago where the sideline started. It was a really close game, and the parents started shouting things onto the pitch when they either agreed or didn't agree with a decision that got made. There was someone put a shoulder in the back of another player and they were shouting on the sidelines. It was shoulder to shoulder, and then the players start because they've heard it from the sideline. Then it gets onto the pitch and the players start making comments, and then you've got to your game management then's got to kick in, and then you've got to you start giving every decision, and then if they start behaving and the game continues, then you can give them more room. And if it starts again, you can bring it back in. But it is infectious. So if you sideline or the coaches start getting on the back of the referee, then the players will start getting on the back of the referee, and then it's especially on a in a park where you're on your own. It's a lonely place when you're.
Yeah, it can be quite daunting, can't it? Yeah.
I think on Saturday I got one of the players turned around to me. I have no idea how you do this every week.
Did it get to that point? Did it?
This was a brilliant game.
Yeah.
Really, really good game. Adults football, vets football. Sorry, really, really, really good game. And but the first tackle that went in, you're speaking to the defender and saying, I didn't like that challenge. Let's not have that again. And everyone else on the pitch going, it was his first one. And it's like, well, how many is he allowed?
Yeah. It's his first one's a bit of a myth, isn't it? Because it's the severity of the tackle or the challenge. I think when I spoke to James, one of our referees, he was like, vets football is just terrible because they all think they can do stuff that they could do 10 years ago. And they think they can tackle like it was 10 years ago, but it's clearly not the case.
Yeah, the other figure, I won the ball.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You were off the floor.
Yeah, the poor fella's 50. He's got to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah. And on a Saturday afternoon, I'll quite often go to bed hearing shouts of "There he is!"
Yeah,
because it's like, but they'll stop. So they all put the hand up. They'll all stop. There he is, ref, and it's like, yeah, but he's not offside because he's not gained an advantage from that. And then another winger will fly in or run in from the sideline and pick the ball up, and all the defenders are still standing there like the Arsenal from the 90s.
Do you know what? That's one thing that's always baffled me. That offsides are the hardest thing to call, and when it goes either against you or for you, and people kick off and complain. Like, if you look out the pitches here at Vauxhall's, obviously there's the barriers that go along the way of the pitch. Now, I can understand parents who are like in line with the referee and whatever, but ultimately, how do you expect that referee to see that? He's making the best possible call he can. Like, the offside one really winds me up because we're sat in dugouts. Like, we can't see it and we're calling for it. And one of the personal things and one of my coaching things is when I'm watching a game or coaching our teams, don't ask for offsides because they either they'll give them or they won't. The players can do it, but I won't. If it's offside, then we get back in and we get a bit of shape. Or if it's given the other way where it's gone for us, it's like, oh, maybe gotten away with one there.
It's the hardest when you're on your own and you're refereeing the game, no liners. Yeah. It is the hardest thing. It took me a good few games to get what position do I need to be in to make sure I can see this. And there was a few teams that were playing they were playing the offside trap, and you're like, I've got to be on this because they're playing for it every time, and you have to make sure you've got the best position to see as best you can from whatever angle you think.
Is this in vets footy again?
No, this was girls.
It was girls, was it?
Yeah. And they'd coached them to keep a high line, so you had to be on to
quite
make
conscious.
Yeah. And I hope I've got better. But yeah, it is, especially on an 11-a-side pitch, if someone's pinged the ball from and you're trying to recover back to where you need to be, and they've played the ball in and everyone's shouting, "There he is, ref," and you're looking going, I don't think he was. Yeah.
You've just got to stick to that decision, haven't you? It's a tough one. Like I said, that offside, it's the hardest one. Like fouls, handballs, it's all kind of subjective, but you can kind of see that in real time. Whereas, your eyes have to be in two places at once, don't they, for offside for when the ball's given, and then where's the run? Now, if there's blatantly like a fullback who can't get up and stuff like that you understand that. But most of the time, it's always very, very tight. And what are you going to do? It's so difficult.
I've done a couple of lines this week as well, and the players relax.
when there's a liner.
I heard on the pitch there was I think it was under 13s, and the captain was saying that we've got liners, so keep your line. They'll deal with all the offsides.
Yeah.
So
very mature at under 13s.
It was a very good level.
A counties game, was it?
No, it was a schools cup game. Yeah. So they're allowed to have a certain number of academy players.
Yeah.
But it was it was impressive to hear him say it. But they relaxed on the pitch. They knew that we were there to be able to see in line with them. It wasn't just the ref making the shout. So they were saying that they were going to go up higher because then if it was given, they were okay, and if it wasn't given, they didn't have to recover back to try and stop the attempt. So and players do relax when they know they've got assistants at certain levels of open age football. I think they're trialing it now, where they're putting assistants on because it is too difficult for the too high level for the referee to have to deal with the offsides as well as everything else that's going on the pitch.
Well, you look at the Business Houses League in Liverpool. Like, there's a lot of ex-pros in there, like Dale Jennings and stuff like that, and you think that standard's probably close to counties level football.
That's the league. That's the league.
Yeah. And you think, because have they just had referees, have they?
Yeah.
Well, see, that's a tough one, that, because the speed that the ball's travelling and the tempo of the game, that must have been so difficult. But by doing that, you heap an extra cost on clubs. But I'm guessing they're probably going to be willing to pay for it if there's decent assistance on the line. Like,
I would say, I think from what I've seen on Twitter and other social media, it's been really well received.
Yeah.
The players like it and the referees like it, because so I hope there is the budget in there for them to be able to roll that out, because it is a high standard. And it can be refed by a brand new ref if they feel comfortable enough to be able to do it. So that's a high difficulty.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine doing it, because obviously you see it on Twitter. A lot of stuff is publicised about football in Liverpool, and it seems to be. I mean, don't get me wrong, it can be bad wherever you go. I mean, we've played a couple of games in Manchester this year with my under-15 side, and that was different. That was different level altogether. Like, we played a team at Wally Range, and that was a tasty game. And you just had to sit back and be like, well, I think we're just going to have to accept it. We played the team called Manchester Cobras as well, and that was exactly the same. It's like, I think you know what you get. Whereas we played Steven Gerrard Academy over in Liverpool, and it was a brilliant footballing game. It was close, it was tight, but it felt more about the football played rather than the physical elements of it, and tackles not so much flying in. But it's different areas and different ways and different demographics as well, depending on areas and stuff like that. So, but Keith, thank you very much for coming in. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's been good to get your perspective from coaching and refereeing side of it. So, Keith, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, bye.
Get social at the Grassroots Network on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.